Here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to. Lots to talk about. The good news. Good news right out of the gate. Yep, some good news. The former guy, the last guy in the White House, he was scheduled to have a big press conference on January 6th. The idea being that Fox News could have the prayer vigil that they were going to have on the steps of the Capitol. They could have that on one side of the screen, and then on the other side, they could have Donald Trump bloviating about how, oh, woe is me, the election was stolen. The election was stolen. They thieved it from me. And I guess some folks said, hey, Donald, it might not be a great idea. I know how much you love to hold the Bible upside down. Might not be such a great idea to go on this childish rant, this temper tantrum screed, while the faithful are on their knees. Might be bad optics. Might be almost as bad optics as, I don't know, encouraging people to storm the Capitol. Might stir up some thoughts. Might get people thinking, hold on, wait. Maybe there's something to all of this talk of the coup and Trump being behind most of it. Maybe, just maybe, we might not want to hit that hornet's nest. So in a moment of, and I got to think that this is probably one of the very few moments in thought where he said, maybe somebody else is right and maybe he's not the boy wonder genius that he likes to think himself. Maybe he just, pulled back a little bit, pulled out. I know something that the Donald doesn't like to generally do, but they've canceled the big press conference that was going to happen down in Mar-a-Lago because, hey, let's have a press conference in the middle of the huge surge that's going on across the country. And, look, had he come out and said, look, for the good of the country, right now is not the right time to have my press conference because of, and he could have blamed Biden. He could have spun this in a much different way because Joe Biden is so screwed up the Omicron. I am now canceling my appearances. He could have taken the high road. He could have been a little smarter in this. Could have turned the attack back a little bit. This could have worked for him. But this, just going away. What was the official this is beautiful. The official statement, so Trumpian. I mean, it's kind of like, the kindergarten, maybe a little bit, maybe second grade. Give me your thoughts. I want to see it. He writes, in light of the total biases and dishonesty of the January 6th unselect committee of Democrats, two failed Republicans, and the fake news media, I am canceling the January 6th press conference at Mar-a-Lago on Thursday, and instead will discuss many of those important topics at my rally on Saturday, January 15th in Arizona. It will be a big crowd, the biggest ever, huge, enormous, tremendous. I kind of miss him as president with the nonsense words he uses. But yeah, this is the statement. And I got to go very presidential. The unselect committee. The failed Republicans. Yeah. I'll tell you, I'm glad he's gone. If we could only, maybe he'd go a little further away. But here's the thing, I do want to see him. I want to hear from Donald Trump. I do. I want to hear from him sitting in front of that unselect committee under oath to talk about what did he do on January 6th? What did he do into the lead up of January 6th? Why did it take him so long to respond? And in all those 25 tweets that he threw out on that day, could he have done something else that maybe would have saved a couple of police officers from being injured, maybe the lives of a couple more? just a thought. But hey, I'll take the small consolation of he's not going to be talking on the 6th. Now, you had some Republicans who thought it was a good idea for him to be out there, like Indiana Republican Jim Banks, who evidently was on with Laura Ingraham and said that he's looking forward to it. He's looking forward to Trump speaking. Trump has important things to say. I think we've heard all the important things. They stole from me. Kind of like a 2-year-old with the rattle. Just someone give him a pacifier, please. Also, our quote of the day from President Joe Biden, and I gotta love Joe's kind of Joeisms. He's talking about the Omicron virus, and he's trying to tap down some of the fears, some of the anxiety, and he said, "Be concerned about Omicron, but don't be alarmed. But if you're unvaccinated, you have some reason to be alarmed." And you go, yeah, Joe, they do. He said this is, a virus problem right now of the unvaccinated, and it is, which is why I find it so ironic that you have Ron Johnson running around, Senator Ron Johnson from Wisconsin. He was on one of our radio affiliates, WCPT AM 820 in Chicago, and he said, quote, "Why would we just automatically assume that our natural immunity is going to be awful? You would think that the default position would be if you've already had it, you ought to be pretty well protected. Why do we assume that the body's natural immune system isn't the marvel that it really is? Why do we think that we can create something better than God in terms of combating the disease?" He added that there are certain things we have to do, but we have just made so many assumptions and all pointed towards everyone getting vaccinated. And look, from the beginning, we were saying everyone get vaccinated. It's going to help keep people away from real sicknesses, which is what we're seeing. The people who are dying overwhelmingly, can't make this up, are people who have been unvaccinated. It's giving the body some help in fighting this stuff off. Nobody is saying, I've never said that it was going to give you immunity. I've never said that it was the end-all, be-all, cure-all. I've always said that our number one concern is not overloading our healthcare system to the point to where people who have other ailments end up dying, waiting to get treatment, which we are seeing. The fact that over the holiday weekend, on one day, we had 1 million new cases of COVID recorded. 1 million. When the previous record was 590, set just 4 days earlier. We are averaging well over 400,000 people a day. We're in land. The fact that in one day you had, 1.04 million cases, which is just mind-blowing. And that doesn't include the people who took home tests. We're averaging, what the numbers are is almost 500,000. I said 400. And those are only 44 of the 50 states reporting. As of this reporting from Bloomberg, you're looking at somewhere around almost 105,000 people in the hospital, almost 20,000 people in ICUs, and 1,909 people on this one day who have died. An average over a 7-day period of 1,343. But hey, the body's natural immunity. And as I was thinking of Ron Johnson's statement, I couldn't help but think about a friend that I knew years and years and years ago. A hyper-religious guy, one of these guys who went to one of these churches where they reach into boxes and pick up snakes. Maybe you've heard of such a thing. I had not. I thought it was kind of a joke. I remember learning about it in the Bible, the handling of the snakes and all this stuff. I didn't know there were actually people who today practice this stuff. And yet, oh yes, there are, Rick. There are tons of them. And this guy was one of those people. And he was, telling the story of how he had reached into the box and the snake bit him. And I'm like, well, why are you here? If you reached into a box of venomous, poisonous, deadly snakes, why are you still here? And I was, kind of, thinking, maybe this was some religious experience that God, had, had forgiven him, and God had spared him his life, and he was able to fight it off because natural immunity. Remember, maybe somewhere in his body he had a natural immunity to snake venom. I did not know. So I asked the question. I go, well, why are you still here? And he said, well, we've got the anti-venom in the back. And I'm going, whoa, wait a second. Hold on. If the whole point of reaching into the box and grabbing the snake is to test God's will by either being bitten or not bitten, are you not usurping God's will by living because clearly he wanted you to die by you being bitten according to your logic? And he's, no. God doesn't want us to die, because if he did, he wouldn't have given us the ability to come up with the antivenom, the thing to help keep you alive. So, I'm thinking of this in the Ron Johnson world, because this was perfectly sane to my religious friend years ago who said, no, of course I can usurp God's will to not die by having science create this shot that's going to save my life, after I was dumb enough to reach into a box of poisonous snakes, testing God's will and fate. And because he made people smart enough, obviously smarter than him, to make this wonderful cocktail of whatever that saved his life. And yet Ron Johnson wants us to believe that no. God doesn't want us to have smart people who figure out how to help our immune system to not end up in the ICU and end up dead. It's a weird kind of world we're in, especially when you're dealing with people in their twisted faith and whatever view of religion they have, which is always scary. I deal with what's in front of us, how we deal with where we can go. And all along, the common sense has been, stay away from each other as much as you can, wear the masks, be respectful of others, socially distance, wash your hands, do those things that are common sense. I was never somebody who said, hole up and barricade yourself under blankets. But, common sense, which seems to be lost, because right now, and this was predictable. This was predictable months ago. You're going to have a huge surge right after the holiday. And guess what? In a couple of months, spring break, can have another big one. Which is why I find it ironic that the states who said, no, we're going to do the natural herd immunity stuff, the Floridas and the Texas, they're now skyrocketing, now looking to the federal government, as in Texas, help bail us out. Now in Florida, they're just blaming Joe Biden for the virus. While I guess DeSantis was off doing whatever he was doing. I hope he was with his wife, as has been reported. But that's why you have a lieutenant governor, someone to step in and actually do work, instead of just going, well, God's going to do what he wants to do. And I'll tell you, from someone in elected office, that's frightful. I want somebody who's going to be a little bit more proactive. And again, the reason we're seeing what we're seeing in front of us, because of these people. Now I look at Maryland. Their Republican governor, Larry Hogan, he has issued a temporary state of emergency saying, our hospitals are filling up, basically citing what I just said. We cannot blow out our healthcare system. We haven't built enough. And I had a caller over the weekend who said, well, we need to be building more hospitals. I'm like, I agree, we should be building more hospitals. But the more I now think about it, the more I go, well, hold on a second. If we build more hospitals, that's great, but we haven't trained enough people to be doctors and nurses yet. We're already struggling with the ones we've got. Maybe ramp that up too. But we're sending out the National Guard. I guess that's a good thing. I'm not sure what they're going to do, but we're sending out the National Guard, and they're going to help. Now I look at Florida, where the Omicron variant has risen 948% in just 2 weeks. And somehow that's Joe Biden's fault. And as Joe Biden said today, let me be absolutely clear, we have in hand all the vaccines we need to get every American fully vaccinated, including booster shots, he said. So there's no excuse for anyone being unvaccinated. This continues to be a pandemic of the unvaccinated. And that's true. And this is where I've finally come to this place where I'm no longer trying to convince anyone that it's in their best interest to get vaccinated. I've stopped. It's no longer my responsibility. It's no longer my job. It's no longer my hope that they will. We're going to lose some folks along the way, and that's their choice. They have made their choice. And the Ron Johnsons of the world and the Left Behind crowd who can't wait to meet the face of Jesus and all of that, don't wait for us. This is where I've been for a while now. If you don't want to do this, great, move along. The problem with this thinking, and this is where I'm struggling still, is that what's next? If we allow this thing to run rampant like it is right now, what does it mutate into? What comes next? How long are we stuck with this? Because we have a percentage, about a third of the country, mind you, about a third of the country that's recalcitrant, that somehow, the Cracker Jack box epidemiology degree that they got is what they're claiming gave them the knowledge that it's all bad, that they're doused in the blood of Jesus. I've heard that too, that they're the ones holding everybody else back. And I can't help but think, go back, a couple of decades. What would have happened if you'd have had this kind of massive group of people, a large percentage of our country, say, no, you're not going to take the polio vaccine. No, we're not going to take the chicken pox or the mumps or the measles or any of those. Not taking any of them. We'd still have people dying from those diseases. And it's frustrating on so many levels. And yet there's so much misinformation out there. And it's angering. Because when the crowd that Donald Trump loves the most, the poorly educated, when they don't believe reality, when they are taught to despise the well-educated, the professionals, we end up in this spot where they don't believe anything. And that's bad for all of us. So, my view, as President Biden said, get vaccinated. There's no reason for it. There's no reason for not getting vaccinated. Do it, or, well, better luck next time. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I'm going to take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Like Daddy, huh?
They'll probably never know about his thousands of hours of on-the-job training.
There you go, Daddy.
Or that he spent as much time in the classroom as someone with a master's degree. You and I know he's one of the experts when it comes to electricity.
Part of the team committed to doing the job right. They call him Dad. You call him the electrician right down the street. IBEW, the power professionals in your neighborhood.
From the steel mills of Pennsylvania, to the auto factories of Michigan, to the modern makers movement, manufacturing makes our nation great. I'm Scott Paul, president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing. We bring business and labor together to advocate for policies that everyone can agree on. Together, we can strengthen manufacturing and create good-paying American jobs. Help us keep it made in America.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I'm still hung up on the Rand Paul, I guess he quote tweeted this American Conservative article, talked about it the other night. It's one of those things that I guess I'm struggling with the definition of voter fraud and election theft and all of this, especially when you look at Rand Paul's quote tweet of this American Conservative article, which went into this whole thing that somehow going out and registering people to vote, somehow encouraging people to vote, somehow helping them to facilitate their ability to vote, and, oh, heaven forbid, talking about issues that may affect their lives and may actually make their lives better to encourage them to vote. Somehow in conservative land, That is voter fraud and theft. And I'll tell you, I guess we have very differing views on what is and what is not voter fraud, especially coming from Pennsylvania, where we actually had some voter fraud. Interestingly enough, all Trump supporters, interestingly enough, dumb enough to get caught casting multiple ballots, which is extraordinarily rare, but here they are, all Trump supporters. Now, again, I go back to this. These are the people who keep pushing the big lie, conspiracy theory, all of the Trump apologist stuff. You've got the loyalists still spewing their fantasies that Trump won in some bizarre landslide. And somehow Joe Biden in his basement stole the election. Pure lunacy. Now, understand, voter fraud and election theft, going to be very real, especially in the next election. And without immediate action, I think we could see both up front and center. That's why I've asked Alex Trsanovic to come talk with us. Alex is the Director of Campaign Finance and Electoral Reform at the Center for American Progress, AmericanProgress.org, their website. They got a new brief out titled How to Save American Democracy. Alex, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks for having me.
So, how to save American democracy? I say simply, we open up the vote to everyone. We make sure it's done on a piece of paper with a magic marker, and we put it in a box that's counted so we can count it over and over and over again. No electronic gimmickry, no nonsense. Simple.
Yeah, well, I think there is some reason for hope here, and we should start on a hopeful note before we get into the problems that we're facing. Congress is on the cusp of passing, I hope, the Freedom to Vote Act and the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. And those would be the most important voting rights bills in a generation. Not only would they, I think, help with some of the problems that we're going to talk about today, but they would also defend voting rights and take a huge step towards ending partisan gerrymandering for good. So that's the good news. But unfortunately, we're also facing some really severe threats to democracy. And all of those sort of stem from what you were talking about earlier, which is there is a conspiracy theory set that has become widespread on the right and that is undermining confidence in our elections.
And that's all by design. Look, I mean, we are now seeing all these papers. I mean, it's amazing to me that they were so bold and so confident to put their coup attempt down on paper in PowerPoints and in memos and in text. I mean, oh my gosh, one of the first things my grandfather told me as a kid is you never put anything in writing. Never, if you don't want your grandmother to see it, don't ever put it in writing. And yet we've got, the most powerful people in the country putting their treason on paper. And I guess that's a good thing. At least future generations will be able to go back and look at it.
Well, I think the amazing thing is that we saw an attempt to undermine our democracy in 2020 on multiple different levels. And even still, I think it's hard for a lot of people to believe that American democracy is truly threatened because we've had it all our lives. We take it for granted. But as you said, we have the evidence of what we expect to come in the next election. And that's what this report that we put out tries to do. It tries to lay out how specifically do we think elections are threatened? Like, what are the actual scenarios? And there are a few different ones of those.
Right. And I want to ask you about that because we're seeing in places like Georgia, for instance, where they're changing the state laws to be able to basically overturn elections at the state level, which was part of the plan that they had put down in their PowerPoints and everything. And we heard a lot about it during the election that, hey, this could go back to the states. So, what do you say to that? What do you say that, election officials might not in the future certify future elections, that a future vice president may do what Trump and others apparently wanted Mike Pence to do? What do you say to that?
Well, I think, first we have to understand the threats, and then we have to do everything we can to address them. So, one of the big threats that you mentioned is certifying the elections. And here in Michigan in 2020, we saw both at the county level and at the state level, officials almost didn't certify the results of the election, which would have created a political crisis. Hopefully we would have been able to resolve that in the courts, but we don't know. It's never happened before. And, as bad as that was in the last election, we have thousands of counties nationwide, and all of the officials who fall into the Trump camp are being encouraged to engage in this kind of behavior.
Right.
So we could see a certification crisis across the country, and we have to look for legislative solutions, and we have to look in the long term for ways to diffuse the hysteria that we're seeing about elections.
So how does the legislation that you're talking about in Congress, how does that alleviate these problems? How does it make sure that those local election officials who, you're seeing it all across the country, that Republicans are mining down to the the base level of government to be able to have the levers of power in their control? What's this legislation going to do to stop if they succeed at what they're very public about doing?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of the legislation right now takes aim at what I've categorized as the second threat, which is that we do have all of these partisan-minded election officials, and they're doing a lot of different things to set the stage for actually undermining the count and for preventing certain kinds of people from voting. So the Freedom to Vote Act would make huge strides to help protect us from this kind of behavior. One thing it does is it prevents you from replacing local officials who you don't like with partisan people who support your candidates. So in Georgia, as you said, they passed that law that allows them to remove local officials and replace them with other people. And so they're doing that. And we're seeing in a lot of places, particularly communities with lots of African American voters, Republicans are going in and taking out those local officials and replacing them with people who are more amenable to their point of view, which is very dangerous for having fair elections. Another thing that the Freedom to Vote Act would do, it was actually create a right to sue if someone is putting an undue burden on your right to vote. And that's a tool that we can use across the board to make sure that people are not wrongly being prohibited from accessing the ballot.
Yeah, it's something we need. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show. We're here with Alex Stefanovic. He is the Director of Campaign Finance and Electoral Reform at the Center for American Progress. You can check out their website, AmericanProgress.org. They got a new brief out, How to Save American Democracy. And, in that vein, where you've got all of these local officials who, we're concerned about how much of, because, I've often said if we could just go back and undo the Supreme Court's bad decision in Shelby versus Holder, maybe some of this could be alleviated. Maybe we could take. Are we well past that being our savior? And is this legislation you're talking about in Congress really the only way we're going to see free and fair elections in this country ever again?
I think the legislation really is a path forward that we need. Shelby County versus Holder took a huge bite out of the Voting Rights Act. It eliminated Section 5, which allowed the Department of Justice to actually oversee jurisdictions that had a history of denying people the right to vote, and prevent bad rules from going into place that would prevent people from voting. So now that's gone. But what the Freedom to Vote Act would do, and the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, is they would replace some of those rules, and that includes setting new national standards that provide people more access to the ballot, mail voting, more rules for governing how we count ballots, and for making sure that we keep records of the ballots that are counted. So there would be a whole new set of standards put in place to ensure that the vote is protected.
Yeah, it's as someone who wants everyone to vote, look, I believe in a country that is this wonderful experiment of self-governance, of self-rule. The ballot box is how we rule and how we govern. Everyone should have access to it. And look, even people I disagree with, and I'm one of the few people who say, look, I want Trump supporters to vote. I want everyone to vote. I think everyone should vote. I think it should be a national holiday. I think it should be I think it should be easier than just going to an ATM and getting money out. This should be much, much simpler and much more promoted. But yet, I see, folks on the other side who are doing everything they can do to limit people's access to it. And I'm struggling in this world where, the people who ran around with their pocket constitutions, Alex, and you may remember them a couple of years wearing the trifold hats and the whole 9 yards, telling me how much they love the Constitution, then saying, well, we don't really want people to vote.
Yeah, it is disheartening, and the sad truth is that it is all being justified on the basis of a big lie, which is the lie that there was tampering in the last election. The sad truth is that a lot of Republicans, believe that Joe Biden wasn't elected president, that the election is not legitimate. It's a huge problem, and it's the basis of all of these restrictions on people's right to vote. But the simple fact is, there was no tampering. The Department of Homeland Security said it was the best run election that they'd ever reviewed. Lots of Republican state officials nationwide said there was nothing at all wrong with the election.
Yeah.
There were 60 lawsuits, countless audits. We've been over the evidence time and again, and not a single thing has turned up. Even Trump's own Attorney General, Bill Barr, said, there was no evidence of any kind of fraud sufficient to overturn the results.
And this was the most scrutinized election of my lifetime, at least. I mean, recounted and counted and evaluated. And even when they had, like in Arizona, they had total control over everything. They couldn't even fabricate enough lies to say that it was stolen.
Even the cyber ninjas in Arizona, who are literally run by conspiracy theorists and hired by the Republican Party to review the election, found that Joe Biden won the election. They even thought that he won by more votes than the official count.
Yeah. Now I look at someone like Brad Raffensperger, who, a lot of Democrats and a lot on the left are giving him credit, and he deserves credit where credit is due. He did not succumb to the pressure of Donald Trump to go and find in the couch cushions 12,000 votes. But here was a guy who did everything he could do before the election to purge enough votes and throw people off the voting rolls to kind of steal the election beforehand. So while I'm giving him credit for not finding the 12,000 in the seat cushions, he still did the best he could do in Georgia beforehand. So I'm going, yeah, but.
Well, I think the problem is that Brad Raffensperger, when push came to shove, he was not willing to change the results. Trump asked him in a phone call multiple times, find 11,000 votes. We just need 11,000 votes. He didn't do it. But the real worrying thing is that he is being punished for not having done it. He was, censured by the Republican Party. He now has a primary challenger that Trump is supporting, and who is saying that he would not have allowed the election to go forward the way it did. And we're seeing this across the country. So, the real worry, I think, for the next presidential election is, we're not going to have Brad Raffenspergers anymore. We're going to have people who have been really brought to power as a result of their wrong beliefs about the last election, and who are immersed in this big lie. And who are going to be inclined when they get that phone call to try and do something the president's way. That's a real concern.
No, you're absolutely right. So, in moving forward, because look, if we don't pass this voting rights bill in the next, I say 2, possibly 3 months, it's not happening. And I'll tell you, Alex, I don't think it's going to happen anyway. I don't think Manchin and Sinema are going to come along. I don't think you get to the 50 votes you need, because sure as shine, you're not getting a Republican to vote for it. At least I don't think so. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think this has been a long road. Getting anything done in Congress is extremely difficult, but I am a little more optimistic than you are. I think that Joe Manchin even has repeatedly said that he is concerned about the state of our democracy, and he wants to get something done. And so, the big question is what we're going to do about Senate rules. My view, which I'm sure you share, is that we shouldn't let the filibuster or any other Senate rule stand in the way of doing what we need to do to protect our democracy. I think there's a good chance that at the end of the day, we do get something done, but it's going to be up to the negotiators in the Senate. And hopefully we'll know more in the next couple weeks.
Yeah, I mean, because here's the thing, and Joe Manchin went and wrote his own bill. And he look, there were some good ideas in there. I wasn't horribly against what Manchin had put forward. I think it's a good start. We think we should do more, but that didn't muster the 10 Republicans that he actually believed he was going to be able to get. So at some point he's going to have to come around on filibuster reform. He's going to have to do something to allow that vote to go forward, so that the next election is actually a free and fair election. Because if they don't get something, I don't hold much hope for democracy moving forward.
Well, yeah, I think it's absolutely critical that we get something done. I think this is the window to do it is now, and I'm hopeful that we're coming up on the anniversary of January 6th. I'm hopeful that that's a reminder to members of Congress of how fragile our democracy is, and that one of the most important things they can do is buttress the right to vote.
Yeah. So last question I've got for you, because this is an uphill climb. What are people supposed to do? I mean, at the end of the day, I don't call your congressman, call your representative, all that stuff doesn't seem to have worked to this point. What are we advocating for? What do you see as the way forward to get this moving along?
Well, I think we need to see continued energy on across the board on protecting our democracy. I think we need to monitor our elections and our local officials, encourage them to make sure that everybody can vote. We need to be keeping an eye out for the types of officials who are going to be inclined to undermine the results of election. And, we need to do the slow work of trying to convince some of our fellow citizens that democracy is important and that we need to trust our elections when they're conducted fairly. But, beyond regular people, we need our representatives to really feel the urgency of this and to feel it on a continuing basis.
And that means call early, call often, make your voices heard, right?
Absolutely.
Good stuff. I hope folks will take a look at the new brief, How to Save American Democracy. We'll get links out on how you can check out Alex Tuvanovich's piece, along with the good folks at the Center for American Progress. Again, AmericanProgress.org is their website if you want to check out more on the work that they do. Alex, I appreciate you taking time for us. Good stuff. Hope to have you back again real soon.
Great to be with you.
Good stuff. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
I've been driving buses for 5 years, and my day-to-day routine is I wake up a little earlier than most people. I get on a bus, I go out, I pick up some students and make sure they get to school nice and safe. Here in Fairbanks, Alaska, that can be a challenge because of the winter weather and the icy roads. But I love the job. So the Teamsters are great. They provide us a lot of protections. They've always taken care of their people, made sure that our jobs were secure. We didn't have to worry about whether or not we'd have a job from day to day.
And that's amazing because before we'd be working 4, 6, 8 hours a day and only earning minimum wage was real difficult to make a living. And the Teamsters pushed a lot so we make something we can live off of and not have to have a second job. What absolutely gives me peace of mind, the union membership allows me to focus on this job without having to worry about whether or not my family is going to be taken care of. I'm Andrew Case and I'm proud to be Teamsters Local 959.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So Ford Motor Company's ramping up production of the electric F-150, and you go, great, now you do this. I just bought a brand new Jeep here a couple of months back. Had you had one of these, I would have bought it in a heartbeat because it's what I eventually want to get. I'd love to get one of those electric F-150s because they look cool as all can be. And look, I want to be on the front edge of the EV revolution, and I just can't bring myself to buying a Tesla though, and that's just one of those things. I want to buy an American-made vehicle with union-made labor. That again, just my world. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on all of the top manufacturing and worker stories of the past year. Maybe a little bit about the electric vehicles. Maybe even a little about Elon Musk going to China. That's why I've asked our good friend Scott Paul to come talk with us. Scott is the president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing, AmericanManufacturing.org, their website. Scott, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, Happy New Year, Rick. And believe me, we could talk cars all day, especially EVs. I'm super psyched about some of the possibilities. Yeah.
I remember, Joe Biden getting to to drive one of the F-150s and just how cool he looked in it, but how cool those trucks look. And look, I'm a big truck guy. I want one of those. Production kind of behind, but they're ramping it up, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, it's going to be great. I mean, they're currently at about 150,000 vehicles. They're going to double that. That'll be 300,000 vehicles per year. Pretty soon it'll be scaled up beyond that. They'll have other models that will be available. GM is just making an announcement about the Silverado, about scaling up production of that. So you'll have a couple of union-made, American-made options. And then you have the other entrants. Yeah, you mentioned Tesla. You have Rivian, which is also a new entrant, has a plant in Illinois, in downstate Illinois. But I'm excited about the possibilities. I think they're good, and I'm glad that some of the original Detroit companies are making investments in the United States to do this as well. I do think it's the future. And we know consumers are responding. I mean, the demand is just shooting up. As you know, Rick, having recently shopped around for cars, but the demand for electric vehicles is picking up from SUVs to sedans.
Yeah. No, and what Ford Motor Company said is they've got in excess of, I guess, somewhere around 200,000 people who've already put deposits down on things they haven't built yet. That's a really good sign, I think. And it's a sign that we, the people, want this and want to move in this direction, especially as I'm starting to look around, and I don't know if this is, the Biden people doing some of this stuff. I don't know if this is the quote unquote free market, but I'm starting to see at the grocery store, there being charging stations, at local gas stations, there being charging stations. Some cities have got them on street corners. It seems like we're starting slowly to build the infrastructure that we need to be able to make this stuff more feasible and more seamless for us to, to bring into our lives.
Yeah, that's right. Because I think the biggest concern that folks have is the availability of chargers and what's called range anxiety. Like, if you run out of gas, you know where to go, right? But if you run out of juice, where's the charging station? And so it is being built out, and that's going to scale up because in the infrastructure bill that was passed, some of that $1.2 trillion goes towards federal funding for helping to build out charging infrastructures nationwide. And so that ought to make EVs accessible for a whole lot of people in most parts of the country. And then you'll see additional consumer demand come in, which is obviously great news for a lot of reasons, for our climate goals, for American jobs, for the future. So these are some exciting prospects.
So now I see the story that Tesla, because look, I'm a big EV guy. I was an early Tesla fan. Look, we need to build these things. We need to build them in America. I wish that the workers there were able to be organized. Musk and that company is vehemently anti-union, and the stories that I've heard, not good, which is why I can't bring myself to buying a Tesla. But I see now that they've opened up a new showroom in China. Because I guess this is a way to undermine kind of what the administration is doing in a way, or am I missing something?
Yeah. So yeah, and I, like you, I mean, there's a lot to like about Tesla. There's a lot to hate too, right? And you pointed out a lot of those things that I don't like as well. Clamping down on workers' rights. Musk seems a little shaky from time to time. I guess that's the polite way to say it. And so a few years ago, Tesla did break ground on a factory in China to build EVs for the Chinese market, because the Chinese said, we're not going to take them from America anymore. Boy, I wish our government would do that, from time to time.
Seriously.
But so just before Christmas, the Congress almost unanimously passed a bill that banned U.S. companies from supplying goods made by forced labor in the Uyghur Autonomous Region of Xinjiang, which is in the very western part of China. And just to refresh your listeners' memories on this, the Uyghur population, they're Turkic, they're Muslim, and they have been discriminated against for a long time by the Chinese Communist Party. And now there are active measures in place that are akin to a genocide. Forced sterilization of women so that they can't continue on Uyghur bloodlines, concentration camps, and forced labor. And a lot of this has come to light. And, but who shows up in the capital of this region? Elon Musk and Tesla opening a showroom just days after the Congress passed this bill with some sanctions in place. And so I don't know. Look, given Tesla's past, I don't know that it surprises you or surprises me that Elon Musk would do something like that. But I really do think it's despicable that it sends all the wrong signals. And it shows that, here's a guy who obviously cares about selling cars, but not at all about the people that would be impacted by a policy like this and by these moves.
Yeah, but again, Musk's one of those guys who's like to put the thumb in the eye, and this seemed like a thumb in the eye moment to me. Just my thoughts. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show here with Scott Paul. Scott's the president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing, AmericanManufacturing.org, their website. We'll get links out on social media on how you can take a look at the work that they're doing. I wanted to switch gears a little bit and look back to the past year because there were some big stories in manufacturing that I think are important. The fact that, we finally are paying attention to our supply chains and where things are made and where they're not made. And I think a lot of people, maybe are awakened by the reality that we don't make as much as we think we do. We don't make as much as we probably want to make. And maybe there's some good ideas in the coming year on how we undo some of the damage of the past couple of decades and reshore our manufacturing. I'm curious your thoughts.
Yeah. And these are issues, all of these issues will carry over into 22 in different ways. And so supply chain is certainly a huge story from last year. And there were all sorts of theories, Rick, posited about why there were these shortages or delays or what have you. And it was like, are there enough cargo containers? Are there enough truck drivers? Are the chassis right, et cetera? But honestly, what it boils down to are two chronic issues that have been around for a long time. One of those is hyperglobalization, is that our supply chains are concentrated all over the world, not close to home, and that creates vulnerability. And number two, you combine that with kind of this method that Toyota popularized, this just-in-time inventory production, and things shut down. And you've seen that on, with respect to anything that depends on a semiconductor chip because of some of these shortages or delays and other sorts of materials as well. And so it is definitely a wake-up call because once you erase all those, all the blame that people were trying to cast, well, it's the longshoremen who were working slowly, or it's COVID. All of that is dissipated. What remains is the hyperglobalization. What remains is the just-in-time production. And when you combine that, you've got a toxic brew for companies, for consumers, for workers alike. Yeah. The answer to that is to reshore as much as we possibly can. And I realize not all of that will come back to the United States, but even if we could get a start, Rick, it would make a big, big difference. And so I do think things like semiconductors, clean energy, rare earth minerals, lithium-ion batteries, that this administration, this Congress gets that and has awoken and are putting some policies into place to prevent this from happening again.
Yeah, I don't live in a delusional world that we're going to be able to claw back all of the industries that we've lost. I say, how about we stop the bleeding now, and then the future industries that we create, the innovations that are coming, how about we hold on to those? Because look, the Chinese are very open and honest about it. They're not hiding the fact that they're going to they want to dominate the world in all of the areas of the future. And it's our job to compete in those worlds, and we can't compete if they're manufacturing our needs and fulfilling our consumer needs. I don't see that good for us in the future. And look, you guys have written the book on our national security and the demands that the global supply chain have put our military in. This just seems like common sense to me.
Yeah, it is, and I think that. The biggest resistors to all of this are the multinational companies. because it's hard for them to get out of that mindset.
Yep.
Because for decades, it's like lowest cost labor unit. And now I think that the equation is going to change. We'll have more incentives to do stuff here. There will also be more cost to producing overseas because there'll be more political risks. Shipping costs will go up. We're going to factor in carbon somehow into all of this. And there's way more attention paid to exploited labor. Not as much as there should be still, but way more than there used to be.
Yeah.
And so I think when you add all of that up, that's going to cause some companies to rethink and to take a look. And that's what I'd like to see is they, instead of a one-way street of jobs moving offshore, is at least we could have some two-way traffic now with a little heavier on the inbound.
No, I'm right there with you. But I've always said that, cheap labor and lax environmental regulations, that's like heroin to CEOs. They're addicted, and it's going to be hard to get them off of that addiction.
Yeah. There's some great entrepreneurs, and we've profiled many of them. If you have the intent to make it in the United States, you can do it. You can actually build a business plan that allows you to be profitable and to make your product in the United States. But you have to have that intent. And you're right. It is an addiction, that low labor cost. And it's just like water finding the lowest point. They can't help it. And so but you got to change the mindset and then you can get some results.
Yeah, if they can't help it, we're going to have an intervention. At least that's my view on it. And we do that by making sure that the investments we're making in the future, like our infrastructure, a historic bill, granted nowhere near what we need, but still $1.2 trillion is a historic number. I wish it were 3 or 4 times that because it's what we need. And also throwing in there the idea that maybe all of the things that we're using to rebuild our infrastructure, maybe we should make it here. Those seem like big stories to me.
Yeah, and those are 2 other big trends from 2021 that I see carrying over into 2022 as well. A long overdue infrastructure, $1.2 trillion, a substantial amount of which is new investment. That's going to make a tangible difference in many types of infrastructure, from building out broadband to areas of the country that are underserved, to roads, bridges, transit, waterworks, and so much more. And the gravy for factories is that because of the Buy America requirements that are attached to the infrastructure, those products will be sourced from the United States of America. So we'll be rebuilding America with American products. And so I think that this is a golden opportunity for anyone who wants to participate, whether you're a construction worker or a factory worker, in a grander ambition that's going to have a generational impact on the United States and position us well and provide good paying jobs along the way.
Yeah, it's good stuff to this point. And the biggest story for me from last year that I think will hopefully carry over to the new year is, the changes that we've had in the U.S.-China relationship. The fact that we're no longer the dumping ground. I was going to use doormat, but we're no longer going to be the dumping ground for China's excess and for their state-owned industry to overproduce and destroy our companies and destroy our jobs. I mean, look, we can argue whether corporate America deserves what they're getting, but the working people of this country do not. For me, it's about protecting their interest as much as anyone else.
Yeah, that's right. I think you would agree with this. Like if you said 5 years ago, the voices on China were basically like Bernie Sanders on one side and Donald Trump on the other side, saying the same thing, basically, that China was eating our lunch, right? And so, people, I guess that was easy to dismiss because Trump was viewed as a gadfly and Sanders was viewed as being too far left, which obviously I don't think is the case. But now you have lots of people saying this. You have Biden saying this. You have congressional leaders saying this. And it's the Chinese who have dug themselves here even deeper by shutting off even more civil liberties in Hong Kong, by perpetuating this genocide against the Uyghur population internally, by being very belligerent with Taiwan, by bullying any critic of China, and also by not abiding by the terms of the trade deal that the Trump administration made with them, that it's going to be 2 years old next week, I think. And so when you add all of that up together, I think Biden has the right approach on this. It's like, look, we'll work with them when we can, but we're going to confront them when we need to. And I think that he can do it probably in a much more strategic way than Trump, who kind of lashed out and then also made a deal that wasn't all that great. And I think Biden will enlist our allies and will make it more effective. And you see evidence of that already with respect to some countries of the EU and Japan. So I do think, I don't want a Cold War. I certainly don't want a shooting war, but I do think that we have to be very clear-eyed, about the threats, the opportunities, and to take it very seriously, and what it means for our larger goals, Rick, whether it's our values for human rights or climate change or creating well-paying jobs and rebuilding the middle class in this country.
Yeah, we got a lot.
We have to have a different policy.
Absolutely. We got a lot to do, and some good stories, hopefully going to carry over into the future. Scott, I appreciate the time. As always, great stuff, my friend.
All right, Rick. Thanks so much. Keep up the great work.
Thanks so much. Our good friend Scott Paul, president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing. Quick break, right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.